So my name's Dave Anderson. I'm an architect at GP, and I'm also founder of Serverless Days Belfast. Quick plug, we have Serverless Days Belfast coming up in the Titanic in Belfast on Thursday week. So that's my next job after this. Today I wanted to kind of tell the story of what we're doing in GP. I'm currently an architect with GP. We have such an exciting story about how we're applying a lot of the best practices we're talking about here today. I loved the first two talks from David and Matt about those EDA kind of patterns and anti-patterns, and I think we've seen all of them. So I'll give myself a quick introduction. So previously I worked with Liberty Mutual for many years, and we kind of figured out this kind of way of driving modernization. And really myself with my two co-authors, Mark McCann and Michael O'Reilly, who's sitting down there. And we kind of put together our learnings a few years ago around, what does it take to modernize an organization? It's not just moving to the cloud, it's what you actually do. So we were very lucky to be published by IT Revolution with Gene Kim and Company, and a foreword's written by Adrian Cockcroft and Simon Wardley. So super excited about the book and this idea of a handbook for modern cloud. What does it really mean for modernization? And people always often, what do you mean by modernization? Or even serverless? And actually, it was funny when I was speaking to Gene about the book, he was kind of thinking, well, is serverless really a thing? And I was like, well, not really. It's more about the way we work. So and people would often ask, why serverless? I mean, what's the deal? When do you move from a container to a function? That's not the right conversation. It's really about when do we start modernization? And I've been talking this for probably about 10 years. This wave of disruption, waves don't come in ones, they come in sets, they come in minis. There's constant disruption with this wave of change. So once you move to the cloud, you're really setting yourself up to this constant evolution. That's why a lot of things we're talking about today are so apt. So I would say migration is always followed by modernization. And that's really when we create the serverless mindset within your teams, you're kind of starting that way of working. And really for the book, the idea in the book we have is the value flywheel. And the big thing that really struck me a few years ago was there is no kind of business and IT. It's a single strategy. So that's that ubiquitous language. How do we join business and technology strategies together and have a single way of that modernization effort? And really there's 4 phases we talk about. There's first, clarity of purpose. It's so important for teams to understand why they're doing what they're doing, and that we use the North Star framework for that. The next, that idea of challenge. You got to create an environment of success. They have psychological safety. Your engineers and teams have permission to question what we're doing. Why are we doing this? Spotting maybe potential improvements. Next, best action. How can we act really quickly with Serverless-First? Offload that work to AWS or your cloud provider to give you the technology you need. And then that long-term value. Use well-architected to build quality in from the start. So that's that. And the reason why I got asked about a year ago, why is it a flywheel? Why is it not just a linear process? Because what you're really doing is you're getting that flywheel turning, you're spotting inertia points, and you're removing that inertia to keep that friction high. It's an environment of constant change. So really getting on to kind of GP, the challenge we had in GP is how do we simplify and accelerate global growth? So I'll explain what global growth is in a second. A nice kind of clear kind of problem statement. So GP are Globalization partners. It's a quite interesting company. I would say they're an EOR innovator. So EOR is employer of record. Like quickly, what GP do is pretty much this industry was very new to me. Basically, if you want to hire a professional in a different country, like say you want to hire someone in Germany, today you'll need to set up an entity, figure out what's the tax, what's all the rules. What GP do is there's entities or there's presence in over, I think it's 187 different countries. But if you want to kind of expand as a company, you can hire someone anywhere in the world. And they will be a full professional on your books, but hired legally through GP. And this is like the employer of record. And global growth is really the category that GP has created to sort of help companies expand. And you can think of a lot of the HR, legal, compliance issues that you see as you hire across the world. And it's this idea of global growth technology is the technology platform that helps that. So really the question that we had as technology is how do we really scale this platform to help us drive this kind of business? So I kind of want to tell you a story about how we actually achieved that. So first of all, we had to put together a kind of strategy. What do we like what do we need to do to actually start on that journey? So, quick disclaimer, I'm an architect. I will give you my architect's view of the world. If a product person, they might give you a slightly different view. This is kind of the world according to the architect. And when I say we, this is mostly thinking by the architecture team. There's about 10 people in the architecture team. It's a very talented team. So there was 3 principles that we put in place early on. The idea of flexible evolution. With the serverless-first kind of strategy, we know that we can move really quickly. We're not doing that undifferentiated heavy lifting. We're building on top of the AWS managed services. So it gives us that ability to evolve quickly. SaaS scale, using the well-architected to build quality in, we can actually know that when we get a lot of traffic, we'll have the scale that we need to go whatever direction we need for our business. And then empowered teams. With the idea of domain-driven architecture, we're giving teams the autonomy and the environment to really evolve what the capability of products that they're responsible for. So these 3 principles we kind of baked in from the start. And this isn't just an EDA talk. I would also say there's serverless-first and domain-driven. So once you have, going back a few years ago, we had a single product, a single monolith. And people will say, when you're taking a monolith and breaking that down to an EDA, you just magically decompose. But people never tell you. It's always like, you see this picture of we had a monolith and we broke it down. It's like, how do you do that? It's like it's magic. And you'll see a lot of people say, well, that's great. We just broke it all down. It was really easy. And now we're good. That's not how it works. From my experience, it's a lot different. When you have a product and you need to break that down, there's a slightly different approach. And for me, it's more akin to platform engineering. How do you evolve that product into an environment where there's other capabilities around that? So some of the things we had to think about is, how do we do that separation from product and platform? How do we siphon off our data strategy? And what are the key enablers that we need to do that? So I want to kind of talk you through these main areas through this talk and describe how we achieve this, or maybe say are achieving, because this is currently in flight. It's pretty mature, but still in flight. So the 3 kind of mechanisms, and I like to think of a mechanism as a kind of abstract sort of strategy. As we kicked off this modernization kind of journey, probably the 3 mechanisms we put in place straight away. The first was executive sponsorship. You can't modernize undercover. So we pulled together a strategy and presented that to the executive team and the board to get buy-in for full modernization. That way, it's like this is part where the CEO is talking about this journey. So that's how we have the CEO talking about domains, which I think is brilliant. For a regular company, the CEO is referencing domains. So this is a top priority. Second, how do we communicate the vision to the entire company? So we used ADRs, architecture decision records. And these are not ivory tower decisions. We write these decisions with the team. If a team member is thinking about we need something around internationalization, we'll co-create an ADR, and that will be the standard. ADRs are always open for comments and for discussion. So that's how and they're completely transparent. So we like to create in the open. If I'm drafting an ADR, I'll put it out there in draft so people can see it's a work in progress. And then enablement. We can't have a command and control environment for technology. It's wrong to hire smart engineers and then tell them what to do. So you need to enable engineers and create that environment where, as architects, we're supporting the teams. So for me, those are the 3 kind of key mechanisms. And again, how do we help the engineers with their path to production? So some influences, I'll be biased here, but there's probably, for me, there's 4 key influences. I think we've always been a huge fan of Nick Tune and the DDD crew. If you Google DDD crew, there's like a DDD crew modeler starter kit, which shows you a lot of these practices tied together. It's a fantastic resource. It's on GitHub. But Nick Tune, plus a whole bunch of other people I won't name, but Nick Tune has been brilliant at describing architecture modernization and kind of how this works in practice. Like, I love the fact that we're starting to take domain-driven design and make it more pragmatic, which I think is brilliant. It's been very academic for the first few years, which is okay. Second, we talked about Gregor Hulp. Last time we had this event 2 years ago, he did the keynote. I've been a fan of Gregor for a long time. I remember when he wrote the blog for the architect elevator, we kind of jumped on it. We thought that's such a good model. And we always kind of thought of that's the way the architect should be able to go shoulder to shoulder with an engineer and have a conversation with the CEO and all the floors in between. So that's a key kind of enablement strategy for architects. Team topologies as a given, but The idea of thinking about flow through the socio-technical issues through your organization, it's so important. So when I think some of the stuff that Matthew and Manuel have on their GitHub is brilliant, like independent service heuristics is fantastic for thinking of capabilities. And then I'll be biased to our own book around how we pull this together. But the one thing I'll say is we've talked a lot about Wardley mapping in the value flywheel effect, and what that will give us that situational awareness. And a lot of our writing is also on the serverless edge site. Just a quick show of hands, is anybody familiar with Wardley mapping? Okay, well, those of you who are not, strap in. So, of course, I'll explain kind of the map. So Simon Wardley had created this way of mapping. I'll just quickly explain it. So for global growth technology, we think of GP, what's the organizational strategy, the company strategy? So I'll just explain the axis. There's a value chain on the vertical axis. The things at the top are more visible. The things at the bottom are less visible, right? So if our customer here, which is a company customer, they'll see the things at the top. They won't see the things at the bottom as much. The horizontal axis is the evolutionary axis. If you think of a capability, every capability will start off in Genesis, like this is brand new, it's magic. Then it will evolve to custom built. We kind of know how to build this, but it's still quite new. Then it will evolve to product. There's now customer demand. Then it will evolve to commodity. Like this is just the price of doing business. So it's not a maturity axis, it's an evolutionary. Things will evolve. So capabilities will start on the left and always move to the right. So we think of the strategy. A customer wants to expand in a different country. That's their need. That need has three dependencies. The ability to find someone, hire someone, and manage someone. So let's think of the more, the ability to manage an employee, you need in-country presence, which GP obviously have for over 180 countries. So that's like a given, which is not easy. To be able to hire and manage, you need capability. So that capability could be to pay someone, to write a contract, to store their details in a compliant manner, to give changes of billing addresses, benefits, pension, you name it, all the things that you have as an employer. And that relies on a platform, right? The ability to find someone is a bit more hard. You need knowledge, which is still quite, I would say, incoming. You maybe need integration with other HR services, like it could be Workday, ADP, whoever. So there's integration with other, but the hire and manage depend on a platform, which all depend on country compliance expertise. You need to know what's the rules for this country. If I'm operating in Germany, Vietnam, Australia, what are the rules in that country? This all depends on resiliency. You need some kind of resiliency for all this information, which depends on technology. I would say the modernization effort that we undertook was let's move technology from being custom right over to commodity. So that's the evolution of technology. So how did we do that? So let's go to a second map around, this is where it gets funky. What does the technology evolution look like? So this is a different map to how we evolved the technology. So if you think of an engineer, the engineer needs the application that they work on. So we're evolving, and this mechanism is called a pipeline. Both of these are correct, but we're evolving from left to right. So we're taking a monolith Java application, and again, our legacy application was on AWS, on containers, and Spring Boot. You know, a pretty well-designed application, but again, we wanted to evolve beyond that. So we're evolving from the monolith over to lightweight functions. That application needs component design. We're moving from packaged to bounded contexts. That needs observability. We're moving from application to distributed open telemetry, right? So distributed trace. The application also has a need for integration. We're moving from point to point to event bridge, which is a need for data, which goes from a shared database, you know the problems that hits, to an organization-wide federated data. So again, this is kind of, think of all these kind of moves. The application also has a need for architecture, moving from a UI-driven architecture to domain-driven. All of that is dependent on infrastructure. We're going from a shared AWS account to an account per workload, which relies on standards, which is teams and silos, moving to a well-architected organization, and then which depends on engineering. And this is, I would say, the attitude of engineering. Are we engineering by function, designers, developers, testers, security, or we have engineers with agency who are like completely shift left, who've got responsibility for everything. So this is almost like doing this type of move. It's almost like doing brain surgery when the patient's still kind of sitting there and you're having the conversation. We're moving a lot of different things, plus keeping the business running. So it's a lot of different moves. The three mechanisms we used here are well architected for our standards, the event and domain-driven concept, and then serverless-first. That was our three kind of ways that we moved it. And there's a few observations here that I've written out. Number one, was shifting that mindset to empowered product development teams. That's a huge change as you're changing engineering teams, a massive change. Two, we're moving from, I would say, modern cloud management and governance using organizational units on AWS. Three, using EDA is foundational across the entire organization, not just a single team. And then four, observability. If everything is evented, then everything is measured. And then number five is that continuous improvement and learning culture. We're always learning here. So that's almost like a map of our technology sort of evolution. There's a lot going on there. So let's talk about the proof point, because as we mapped out this way of this modernization, I always believe in a show, don't tell, and Michael there and Claire Montgomery had a huge, this was kind of their proof point. We thought, let's do a small, almost like, let's do something first. So of course, this is, well, what's your biggest problem? And the area was our biggest opportunity was the financial area. So we had like you think a large company like GP will play a lot of, there'll be a lot of billing, a lot of money moving around. So when they looked at the monolithic application a few years ago, probably about 3 years ago, there was a single application and a single account with a lot of different teams in that account with a shared database. So about 35 squads, centralized QA, kind of a lot of operational overhead and no clear ownership, everyone kind of in on top of each other. So as you can see, like the DORA scores were okay, like for throughput, but it was probably around medium, maybe releasing every 2 weeks, high cognitive burden, and some other things just kind of tipping along. So what the team did was use some of these mechanisms to try and modernize this architecture. So let's try and take out some accounts, some AWS accounts into financial accounts, financial pricing, and use some of these mechanisms to try and show the modernization. So let's use well-architected, serverless-first, event-driven, threat modeling to use Stride up front, and SCARP, which is our process for well-architected, which I'll explain later. So that all of a sudden reduces the cognitive burden and brings that the kind of DORA performance up to elite, where there's constant deployments and high quality. So that was done in maybe 18 months, a relatively short period of time. So what are we starting to see? Year on year, we're going from high run costs, the low features delivered. We start to change this graph, the reducing run costs, the higher business value and higher features delivered. So we call this like the rate of turn. We should start, that flywheel starts turning quicker as we bring in some of these practices. Remember, this is just in a single department within the organization. This was our proof point to say, like, this is what this transformation will look like. So what's the business results? Decreased time to value. There's improved cash flow as we start to pay bills a lot faster. There's customer satisfaction. There's more flexibility and business agility, as we talked about, that we can be, much better customer experience. Any new products or channels come on board, straight away we can integrate with them, and that there's operational efficiency increase of around 80%. Like that's a massive kind of uplift. And this isn't just for like a single like product manager. This is for like the CFO seeing this. So again, you have lots of visibility around this change. So that was our proof point to say, when we do this large-scale modernization, we have a reference point to show that, that this will work. And a lot of the squads in Belfast actually delivered this. And again, not a lot of squads did this, just a small number of squads. So you can have massive like company impacting change with just a relatively small number of people. So then as we think, how do we take that and then scale the organization? We're going to talk about enablement. What do we put in across the whole organization to enable this type of change? So I want to talk about 6 enabling constraints. And I talked about enablement can't be command and control. So it's like you can't, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. How do you encourage people to move with you, not for you? So I love the way John Cutler, I'm a massive fan of John Cutler, and he had this blog a while ago talking about making things better with enabling constraints. And I'll not go through this in detail, but you see he talks about, he calls it good progress, but strikes it out, working agreement. How do we agree to work, like across teams, and there's bad process. So some of the things in bad is like one-sided value, set in stone, disconnects, control, like safety, like things like inflexible. over core principles, flexibility concerns, mindfulness, co-creating. Like for me, this is a much better way of working, and that's kind of the mindset I would say we sort of took on as we took this enablement. So I want to talk through 6 constraints that we've put in place. So the first one is Backstage. Like when I was in Liberty, we actually built our own internal developer platform, which we kind of needed to do back in 2018. Now in 2024, you don't need to do that. So we use Backstage as our internal developer platform. So what does that mean? Every single account is vended or requested through Backstage. There's single patterns. So whenever any engineer wants to create a workload, they go through Backstage. So there's a single kind of point for engagement. So for me, that's fast flow over eliminating toil. What I've often seen for platform engineering teams is they'll make improvements to make life easier for the platform team. You got to make improvements to make it easier for your engineers. So that's your customer. This is often lost. So again, how can we enable our engineers to move faster? I'm actually interested enough for Backstage. We're using a managed service of Backstage. It's a company called Wardley. So I don't even want to install Backstage. Let's just have it as a software as a service, so we don't have any operational load. So that's, for me, that's true DevOps, that we're enabling fast flow. The second one is standard skills. I give a big shout out to the serverless land team here, is that I don't want to be writing documents to explain to our engineers how we do things. So let's have sensible defaults. And whenever someone has a question about EDA, just point them to that website. There's a brilliant team at AWS around the developer advocates. Just read all their content. Like if you read that, you're 90% there. So why should we spend time and effort in our own internal wiki writing guides for things? Just use the industry best practice. That's massive. And that really, it's just such a shortcut for ramping people up, because you're going to have teams and teams who haven't seen these concepts before, so make it easy for them to learn. The third one is well-architected. Like, let's have well-architected as an actual standard within the organization. So the well-architected framework, I think, is brilliant. So every single workload gets a well-architected review. And again, we go through the 5 pillars of security, cost, operational excellence, reliability, and performance. And then the team own the outcomes. It's not like an audit. The team have a standard set of questions, again, industry best practice, and they measure against themselves. And as an architect, I just help them guide them through that. And then because we have a centralized, well-architected account, we can dashboard all the risks, high, medium, or low, that we find, and we can see patterns across the entire organization. So this is such a game changer. And one of the things that's really nice is that when you start to think about cost as your architecture, you have the conversation about cost with teams. And one of the things you start to see is engineers going in, making a change to maybe save $1 on a workload. That's the right mindset that you want. It's way different from the olden days that people were spinning up an instance costing tens of thousands of dollars, and they didn't even know about it. So this makes it visible. We can use some of the tools out of the box, like Trusted Advisor, Resiliency Hub, Security Hub, the well-architected tool. That becomes our sort of our default. We also use Cloud Intelligence Dashboard. So we have all these dashboards and tools just for nothing. Again, another point, as we often say, is cost is a great proxy for your carbon score. But I still think sustainability is quite an advanced pillar. But it's kind of, I think, well, let's get the 5 basic ones done first. And this gives, again, with the empowerment, gives the team agency to improve what they think they need to improve. And our well-architected process we call SCARP. So every 2 weeks, one of the architects will meet with a team. And we usually have maybe a few teams, like 4 or 5 teams will meet together with the architect. And we'll have a single dashboard, usually a wiki page. It's a lo-fi dashboard. We'll just record their trends. And we'll go through the SCARP is our acronym there, which Michael O'Reilly there made up. It's just a way that every 2 weeks we'll get into the mindset of continuous improvement. That we'll think about, so what are your security trends, performance trends, cost trends, and just to have a conversation in a safe space. But what do we think the team want to do? So we'll have the well-architected review as a formal review, and then SCARP as a kind of almost like an informal checkpoint every 2 weeks. And that's where we kind of action things. And this is an absolute game changer. The fourth constraint is the threat model. Like, we want the teams to threat model their own workload. And we use Stride for this with spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privilege. We'll sit and have the teams draw out their DFD, their data flow diagram. They'll analyze it themselves for threats, and they'll put their own mitigations in. and then we'll sit and review this with architecture. And then when they get to security reviews, they're usually looking pretty clean. Again, this is a brilliant way for teams to own their own secure development. I think this is a Microsoft framework, but it's absolutely brilliant. Fifth, this was, again, like I'll credit Mark McCann with this. Having EventBridge is the organization's eventing backbone. So we'll not have EventBridge for a particular team. Right across the org, the standard for events is EventBridge. And again, as David Barney talked about, he's got the EDA visuals. So anytime someone will say, how do I decouple two domains? We'll go check that out. There's best in class. So again, you've actually got guidance there that you can talk to. There's a single service, a single standard. So that aligns application development with all the product managers can talk on events, and infrastructure, we know how to operate and secure events. So having that as a single standard without kind of any question has been a game changer. And that means we can look at individual patterns within EventBridge for the organization. And then sixth, choice. Talked about reducing cognitive load. With Serverless-First, it's really straightforward. We'll say to teams, when you're creating the bounded context, there's pretty much 4 services you start off with. You've got Lambda, Gateway, Dynamo, and EventBridge. That's your 4. Like this, we're saying, don't use onlys. We'll say, start here, and then add whatever else you need. So then as teams have other things they need, they'll bring in other services like fault injection simulator, trusted advisor, whatever. And this gives teams a fairly small palette of tools they can work with, which again brings together all the skills. This, again, you'll notice a lot of them are managed services, which again, for some engineers is a very different way of working, but once they get into that, I think it enables that kind of fast flow. So that's the 6 enabling constraints I would put in for sort of that enablement. A single platform, standard skills, well-architected, Stride, EventBridge, and then that Serverless-First, that kind of restrictive. So that, for me, that's been super powerful to kind of just level the playing field for all our teams. And again, this is all teams in the whole company. Let's talk about the platform. Once we kind of put those enabling constraints in, what's that platform piece look like? So again, this was a game changer as well. We initially had one account, and then we have several accounts with all the workloads in the same account, which never works. You start bumping up against each other. And there's a really nice diagram in this white paper, organizing your AWS environment using multiple accounts. It's got this picture, which I love. It talks about sustained traditional ops, where you've got your dev team, your operational team, your cloud platform engineering team. And this is kind of transitional, very much traditional kind of IT. Then you move to this kind of cloud ops, where you've got your dev team doing applications and the cloud engineering team doing platform. And then there's this third model, where the cloud platform team is a very thin team. The team topologies guy talk about sometimes the thinnest viable platform. Your cloud engineering team is your thinnest viable platform. So you're putting all the responsibility, not effort, responsibility with the dev team. And then the cloud team are just effectively standing up that infrastructure. Again, this has been a game changer. And to do this, we've taken this, there's the organizational units, where we think about, and this is just a diagram from the white paper. There's a single root account, it's the management account. There's security is often a separate kind of tree. We have sandboxes, which are short-lived sandboxes. If you want a sandbox to play around with something, you can spin it up an account, do something, and it's ephemeral, it goes. They're pretty open, but there's no data at all. And then for workloads, we'll have dev, test, and prod. So you stand up your dev account, then you move to test, and you move to prod. And I'll talk about that for a second. But for each team and a workload, they'll have 3 accounts. We're going to have hundreds and hundreds of accounts. So this is just a way of really isolating, complete kind of isolation around our AWS accounts. So that's been really important, how we manage everything. And again, this empowers developers because they own the account. So they're responsible for security, governance, and operational concerns. And again, this is an excellent pattern for lowering that cognitive burden. It also gives us the ability to use a lot of the AWS tools to kind of manage and govern these accounts. So I talked about that process. This is the kind of our process we put in place. So when a team is creating a new bounded context, so a bounded context could be something like payments or documents, or even something like our own customer. we'll say, okay, first thing, if you're creating dev, define the bounded context. What's the business purpose for this? What's the capability? Like, what's this for? Who owns it? Let's talk about that. And let's agree what are the KPIs. So that's a document. If you create a document to say, this is the bounded context I want to create. So we'll look at that and go, yep, that's good. Then they get a dev account, which a dev account has got some access. We advise infrastructure as code, but you can maybe do a few things through the console. So then the teams will start creating that workload. They'll do their well-architected review. When they create the workload, they'll sync into the platform, data schemas, pipelines, trusted advisor. They'll stand up their cost intelligence dashboard, do the threat model, go through Security Hub, make sure that's clear, start creating tests, performance tests. At that point, we have a fairly high-quality workload. We give them a test account. The test account is pure infrastructure as code. So any assumptions that I've made, some things may break, like we need to manually tweak this, that breaks. So then when the test account, that's production-like. Then we'll start to turn on observability, set alarms for cost, do more intensive scans. There's higher standards for security. We'll review runbooks, test plan, and then we give them a production account, and that's them live. They can deploy at will. So we'll have this process, and again, you can see it's aligned to the well-architected framework. So every single bounded context goes through this. You can imagine at the start, teams are like, oh my God, that's a lot of work. But once teams can get through this really quickly, it's baking in good practices from the start. For the data standardization, again, super important, because there's a single platform. We can have a single set, David talked about this earlier, about having a single set of schemas for events. So all our business objects we've got schema and metadata management, and they're registered centrally. So we'll have sources of data being our own platform through EventBridge, legacy ETLs, and integrations with like Salesforce and Workday. We'll bring that into this data platform, which is a Databricks, it's a data lakehouse. Structured and unstructured data will come in, be processed, and go through a bronze, silver, gold. We have a single kind of record of that kind of data platform. So all events are synced to this data platform. That we can then have consumers around AI, other platforms, business intelligence. Again, that's a really great way of centralizing all data flowing around the EDA. Again, we're still kind of evolving this, but this has probably been in operation for a year now, and it's huge insights. Every event is centrally managed, and we've got a community of practice around how we enable teams with tooling and the advice. So this again is a really interesting. Again, the benefits of having a single event backbone. So platform considerations is that thin cloud platform, a well-architected software development lifecycle, and data is part of that platform. So that lets us kind of govern that standard language, that ubiquitous language around, if we have a business object, it's now locked in as a schema. So there's a single, we'll say it's a customer. That's it. And it's defined what that is. So let's move the products. So once we start to put the enablement and the platform in place, how do we move the products? So again, a nice quote there from Adrian Cockcroft. If you really want to be innovative, what you do is you don't put lots of blocks up. So we've talked about this idea of enabling constraints. Now it's time to get out of the way of the teams. So you don't add innovation to a culture, you get out of its way. So when I talk through, this is a domain message flow diagram, just to give you an illustration of the type of thing that we have built. So the little purple clouds there, that's a bounded context. The bounded context is a single workload and a single account, right? And the bounded context lives within a domain. The boxes are domains. These here are the events. So these are events going back and forward. And you see this main flow here, this is the product. So this is the product kind of layer, and the yellow boxes are platform, and the two green is the data platform. So when we talk through this idea, so think of an event storm. How do we onboard a customer or a professional? There's a brand new person on the GP platform. How do we onboard them onto the platform? So you think of how you would event storm that. You'd do out your domains. You'd think of the events to go back and forward. You do that exercise, and then you map that to an implementation. And this is the actual implementation. It looks like an event storm. So your customer comes in through the application, kicks off the onboarding, bounded context. We'll say it's someone in Germany. Goes over here to compliance, say, how do I onboard someone in Germany? What's the compliance in Germany specifically? We'll look at the data dictionary to say, like, what are the different objects called I need to use. We'll then render the experience, an event back to say, here's your experience for onboarding someone in Germany. We'll then onboard that individual at professional. They'll go in here. They'll create the worker, which is the business object, create the user to get access to the system, make sure that's associated to the customer, the actual company, and come back. There's another platform service here, which is the communications. Maybe there's chat, maybe there's emails. That's handled separately. Eventually, it comes down here to the professional offer. Let's create a contract and send that to that individual, all synced in the data platform. Again, what I like about this is that's pretty much the architecture diagram, but it also looks like an event storm. And that's once we can get the stakeholders, both product and engineering, thinking in this way, that's your common ubiquitous language. So again, for me, this is modernization. This is breaking something down for the business flow. So what's in the purple box? So a single bounded context, a single account. So here's one here for a record. You'll see here, this is the domain, this square. This is the boundaries of the account. You've got Event Bridge here with a lot of events coming in. You have an Event Bridge going out. You have a few lambdas. There's a step function, a few other step functions. You have Dynamo, an API gateway. I think that's another dependent. That's a lambda calling to another. I think it's a security service. So you've basically got single. So it's a super simple idea. So that would be an example of an architecture diagram that's within a single architecture review. It's very, very straightforward to understand, and again, completely isolated from everything else. So pretty much each of those kind of bounded contexts will look like that. Again, that kind of enabling constraint. So for me, what this does is this takes away the complexity of designing big, complicated implementations. So we think of each of those bounded contexts as a capability. So then you can sit back and think about what's the capability that the organization needs. Let's not talk about features and building features. Let's talk about creating capability. And this is another nice example, I think it's from Nick Chun, this idea of a domain map. So if you think of capabilities that are generic, you can just get from anywhere, supporting and core, we want to think about what are the capabilities we need as an organization and where do we need to move them. If you think about, for GP, there's advice, billing, compliance, employment. They're all things we need to be good at. Things like documents, that's just supporting. Integration platform, we need to be good at them, but they're not part of our core IP. And things like infrastructure, we want to move that away, completely offload that. So this is a nice way to have the conversation, think about what's the important capabilities, and what's the less important capabilities. Again, it ties back to the buy versus build, and where do we need to spend our time. This, again, super interesting way to tie business and technology together and have that common language. And one of the ways we've done that, you think about advice, we start to think about advice is important because people need advice. So the way they get advice is to call up and talk to someone. Like, well, how do we evolve that capability? So all of a sudden we bring in our Gen AI. So we've created this kind of global intelligence assistant, which we've launched internally. So now we've got all the knowledge we have in a single kind of model, a single kind of agent. So we can then go in and ask questions. And I think this is fascinating. I was talking to a friend of mine a few weeks ago, and he was saying that we were talking something about paying tax in a different country, and he was saying he had to pay a couple of £100 to figure out how to pay tax in a different country. So after a few days, I went in and asked Gia the same question. It gave me the answer straight away, and plus all the references. So this is currently an internal that will be moving to external. And again, as a way of evolving capability, I think this is a really nice example of something that we can build on top of our EDA. So that gives our internal staff just this massive amount of knowledge at their fingertips. So again, you think the product, we architect for change, because we don't really know what's coming, so we architect for change. The architecture mirrors the process. They're one and the same. We think about capabilities as opposed to features, getting away from the feature factory idea. And then once you have that platform in place, that drives creativity. We can actually drive proper evolution. Again, like the architecture will support change. So let's think about some key learnings of the journey so far. We've probably been, I think, we pitched the full modernization kind of idea probably about maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And it's been probably we've probably been, had this, I'd say probably about 15 months we've been onboarding teams with this. So some key learnings. If you reflect on the flywheel, in a rapidly growing market like the one we're in, this is a brand new category. It's still very new. It's really hard to figure out clarity of purpose. There's so much opportunity. It's hard to figure out what should we be doing, what should we not be doing. So it's really hard to figure out what's the North Star. There's so many things you could be doing. So prioritization is really difficult. Challenge. It's hard. You don't want to say we're going to let teams fail, but teams have to learn. There's a nice cycle of act, fail, and learn. Do you want to make small failures? You can't be there. It's like when your toddler's trying to walk. They need to fall a few times. So it's having a really fast feedback loop that we can, give teams that space to be empowered, but also be there if there's something major happening. I would say serverless-first and event-driven architecture are really difficult. We hire a lot of engineers from, I would say, regular companies, maybe haven't worked in these areas before. It's a big step up. It's a big step up. It's still evolving. And well-architected, in my experience, there's a lot of engineers who aren't familiar with well-architected. It's such a goldmine of content and advice, but you still see a lot of people, initially they're like, this is just bureaucracy and audit, why are we doing this? And when you start to get into the conversation, you start to realize the richness of making space to talk about resiliency, talk about performance, cost optimization, and there's so much good advice in that framework. So I don't think a lot of companies aren't using that properly, I would say. So it's been really interesting to kind of reflect on some of the things we've learned. Great quote by Nat Nigerian, our Chief Product and Strategy Officer. As we started to create this kind of platform, there's a focus on product to innovate, but we can't build the way we've always built. We can't do our whole build up front. We got to really go quickly. So I was in a meeting and we were talking about a brand new product, and he said, let's get scrappy. Like, what do you mean scrappy? He said, let's just put something out. Let's see what happens. So there's a great quote by this guy, Nick Westergaard, who wrote a book called Get Scrappy. It's actually a book about marketing. He says, the intention wasn't to create the shiny new thing, or the scrappy approach. It's a reliable and repeatable framework you can use for whatever lies ahead. So you don't know exactly where you're going because things are evolving, but you're testing and learning. Very different mindset, and EDA absolutely enables that. EDA maturity, I thought this is super interesting. There'll be a lot of what I'd call enterprise thinking. People coming from big companies and say, this is the way things work. Like for me, EDA at an organization level is not that common. So people will say, well, it's best practice to have a shared library. Like, nope, big ball of mud, no shared libraries. Well, we should build for reuse. Nope, build the capability. Or we should build this code really well so everyone can use it. Nope, that's introducing risk. So there's a lot of the traditional good practice you have to kind of flip on its head. And you have a lot of really talented engineers, but you almost have to kind of change their mindset, which is a lot of work. They're not wrong, but it's a different landscape. Even coordinating releases. Let's coordinate a release. Not really, just release whenever you want. Visibility. It's really hard to describe the shape of an event-driven system. We've started using information flows and business flows. You can't have your traditional architecture diagram. Netflix famously with their microservices had the Death Star of microservices. So it's really hard. What we found is the architecture mirrors the team structures. There's a whole socio-technical piece here where it's how do the teams interact. And if teams don't interact, then the architecture won't interact. So there's a really important thing. Again, massive piece here around team topologies and think about that fast flow. That's easy in a monolith because everything's all together. And then asynchronous behavior. I mean, David mentioned the piece Werner Vogels did a few years ago, where he famously went into a cafe in order to play the chips, and he got handed a chip at a time, which was kind of synchronous. So, we don't think in an asynchronous manner. So decoupling is really difficult. And I've lost count the many times that when I say API, the team would think, oh, a REST API, a REST call, a synchronous REST call. No, API could be an event. It's the interface. So there's a lot of almost like assumptions you need to validate when you're working with teams, trying to help them on the EDA journey. I do think I'd be super interested in this. I did a talk about a year ago, and I talked about serverless-first and domain-driven. And a guy ran up after and says, I've never seen those two things put together. I never thought of putting those two things together. I think there's misunderstandings about what serverless is, and that domain-driven design is this old thing. So I'm glad I'm hearing a lot of people today. I think there is a trinity between EDA, domain-driven, and serverless-first. I think that's super interesting. And even doing that across an entire company, I still think is quite rare. Some of us have done it in projects. I've done it in projects in the past, but actually doing it in an entire company, I think I'd be interested to see, is there any other examples of that? I think it's where we'll go, but I don't think it's very mature. And maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. And now, closing out, there's this idea of continuous compliance. I mean, we often talk about like annual audits and how do we do this. Like well-architected enables us to give developers the freedom to deploy, but constantly auto-remediate and spot threats. That's we're constantly thinking about that mindset. I want our developers always thinking about those 5 pillars. Serverless-First helps us keep up with AWS, and anything that new comes out, we can use straight away. I asked one of our cloud engineers once, I said, if an AWS launch a brand new service on a Monday, how quickly do you think we can use it in our company? He said, oh, probably about a month. I said, I'd like the next day. We need to be super fast. We can bring these things in. And EDA is really how we tie everything together. That's that single kind of thing. So again, that's the summary. So I've talked about the simple tenets we used around those flexibility, scale, and powered. Using Wardley mapping to create clarity on the modernization journey. Start that flywheel early. Show, don't tell. And create that momentum. Enable via constraints. It's not command and control. You've got to help people get to where they're going. Platform engineering is not DevOps. You know, that thin, viable platform. And then product focus. How do we really help the product teams build the right thing? That's probably one of the biggest challenges. There's a massive emphasis on product discovery and doing it well. And I would say as an architect, you really design the system, get out of the way. So that's pretty much me. I'll continue to say migration is not modernization. We don't just move things, we modernize things. Like I say, we've got the book signing later on. I think it's 12:30 downstairs. Myself and Mike will be signing books. More than happy to talk about the book or even that acceleration story. I think it's super exciting to go through these things and do these things in anger. There's a lot of learnings. So that's pretty much me. Come and say hi. And please don't forget to rate the session. And feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn or even stop and say hi. Thank you.